Hi everybody, Leslie here. Today's video is a bit of a long one because I got a bit carried away with this technique and I wanted to explain before I get into the making a little bit about what it is. So this is a kind of puzzle spinner card. So this was my first attempt after seeing something similar on Instagram, but I'll explain why mine's different to what I saw. So the idea is that you send this mixed up and it becomes like a puzzle. This isn't the best example. This was the first one I did and I realised I should have had a better contrast with my greeting and my background paper. So even though I put vellum in between, it just got lost on the paper, especially once you've mixed it up. So this isn't the best example, but this was the first one I did, basically like a proof of concept. And it worked perfectly. So I'm going to show you how to make them. And this was the second one I did just to show you that it works better if you've got a bit more contrast. I'm not going to make this one in the video. You'll see exactly how this one's made, but there you go. So you can see if you send this to somebody mixed up, it's a puzzle card. I'm going to show you how to make these 4 cards. So this one obviously is just a variation on the one we've just looked at. And then there's this one, which is all done with some silhouette stamps. And again, it works really well as a cute little puzzle card. And I'm going to show you some of the mistakes I made along the way. So hopefully you won't make the same mistakes. So on this one, I haven't got the outer rings spinning, so it stays the right way up. So the words stay the right way up. On this one, I've got it so that because the image is around the outside, I had it so that you could spin the outer ring as well. Then this one, and this is a stamped and embossed and coloured image that I had sitting in my bits box, and I wanted to show you that you could do it on different shaped card, and if your image went outside you could cut it out as well. So that's this one. And then finally there's this one, which I thought was really cute if you had images of things for children. So if your kid's favourite character is Peppa Pig, you could find an image to print out or cut something out of a colouring book. So you could easily adapt this to pretty much whatever style of card you like. And the reason that my version's different, the version I saw from someone on Instagram, and I can't remember who it was because it was a story and it whizzed past and they disappear after 24 hours. So I'm sorry, whoever it was. I would credit you if I could find it again. The reason mine is different is the version I saw, it was more like this style where they'd done a large die cut word, and they'd created the same image in coloured paper 4 or 5 times, however many rings they had. But I thought that was quite a waste of resources. I didn't really want to create this one image for 5 times, however many rings. And also, if you wanted to adapt it to this, where this is an image that's been sat in my bits box for like 2 years, waiting for me to use it, I stamped and coloured this, and I only had one of those. So while if you were just using coloured paper, you could, coloured card, coloured paper, you could probably recreate the thing 4 times and then stack them up, which is what they were doing. If you were creating your own stamped images, not so bad with a silhouette, but you'd need to have 5 identical backgrounds to do this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I don't have 5 sheets of this paper. I might have 2, but I certainly don't have 5. So I thought I'd show you a way that you only need to create your image the once, which obviously saves you time, and then you don't need to, keep making the same layer over and over again. So let's get started. I'll show you how to make these and let's have some fun. I've already prepared some bits and pieces because you do need to have a few circles cut. So to do it the way that I've done it, let's not stick that to there. All you need is nesting circle dies. So these ones happen to be tonic, but it'll work with any nesting circle dies. For these specific tonic ones, this is the largest one, which is just under 6 inches. So this is 6 inches on my board. So it's just under a 6-inch circle, my largest. And then I skipped 2 in my particular set, and then use next one, skip 2, next one, skip 2, next one. So I've got 4 of my nesting circle dies. And what you need to cut out before you stick them together like this is you need 1 of your largest, you need 2 of your next size down, 2 of the next size down, and 2 of the smallest. So you can make these any size you want really, depending on your own circle dies, but you need 1 of the largest and then 2 of each of the others before you stick them together. So I stuck mine together just with some washi tape so that once we've created our front panel, we can cut it out. These ones helpfully have got little notches on them. So they've got 4 little notches. So to help get these lined up as best I possibly could, I just lined up my tiny little notches. You probably can't see, but I lined up my 4 notches with lines on my glass board, or you could do it on a cutting mat, anything that's got a grid. I just lined up the 4 little notches and then lined up the next one and then the next one. And that means they should all be in concentric circles, so they should all have an even spacing between each one. And that is quite important. You can eyeball it if you're good at seeing that sort of thing. I'm not great at seeing that. It doesn't need to be really perfect, but you do need it reasonably accurate. So I've also just cut out ready my thank you, which I've cut out of, I think it's a Hunky Dory Rainbow Mirror. And if you've been watching any of my previous videos, this is just one of the background sheets from this pad of paper, which is from the work. So this lovely little 6x6 pad, I've already used some bits on another card, and this was only £1.50. So I'm just going to stick this to here and then I'll show you how I cut it out. So when you stick it down, just whatever you're using, just bear in mind that you kind of want it all to sit within your largest circle, and whatever you are putting on, you also are going to end up with a dot in the middle. So like this, you'll end up with a dot in the middle. So if you don't want it to hit your words, just make sure that it's going to sit so that the centre point obviously hasn't got anything on it. And it's also quite important to get yourself glue right to your edges, because we're going to cut this up. You need to make sure that any little pieces on the edges aren't going to fall off. I do need to just give this, because it's a wet glue and I'm going to put it through my die cut machine, I do just need to give it a minute or so to dry, just because otherwise it makes it harder for it to get through the fibre of the paper, because the fibres of the paper are damp. All we need to do is run this through our die cut machine, and I have magically got that set up. So let's swap camera. This is the first time I've ever done this. So my mouse out of the picture. So there we go. We've got a die cut cam. This is the first time I've ever used a second camera. So hopefully this will all work and you can see what I'm doing. So all I'm doing is popping that through my die cut machine, and hopefully it's only a thin paper in the background and there's not too much thickness. This is the only thing, whatever you put on the top, you are going to just need to make sure that it's not too thick that your dies can't cut through it. Okay, so hopefully this is all cut through nicely. Didn't want to damage the outside edge. Yeah, you can see it's still a little bit damp on the paper, but hopefully it's cut through everywhere. So Here we go. So what you want to do, especially if you do want to use your outside edge, carefully peel everything out of your die. We've got everything cut. Now, the reason you need one large one and two small ones should now become apparent. So what you want to do is stick your largest one to your largest circle that you've already cut out. And I just raided my scraps for these, so you're never going to see any of these. Put these out of the way. All of these pieces, you won't see them. You might see an edge, which is why I've just gone with white scraps, but I just raided my scraps, which has things that have got an inky smudge on, dirty and things like that. So my scraps have got bigger sheets, smaller sheets, all sorts of things in them. So you just need to want to line up your edges. Now, the reason you need two of these is, I did try it without doing this, but if you don't put a kind of liner on the inside, when you stick your next one to your next circle, so this one's going to get stuck to the next circle, if you don't put this liner in and you drop this in, you can't really turn it. So this is why you need two of the next size down. So this one is also just going to get stuck in there. And again, you might see an edge, but you're never going to really see it. So this is why I said, if you've got, I hope you can see, there's a tiny little bit of the word which hasn't come off, fortunately. So this is why you do need to try and there's a tiny bit of the T there. You do need to try and make sure that you don't lose any little bits of your letters if you've done it this style. And I'm just going to do the same all the way into the middle. The next thing you need to do is temporarily tack everything back together. So I like to do it with my pattern lined up, just because it means that I can make sure I've got everything lined back up. This is just some washi tape, just to hold everything in place so that when we do make our hole in the middle, everything is as close as we can get it to being lined up together. So yeah, so I've just put temporary tape. So here we go. This is what it's going to look like. So we need to find the center of this now. And the way I did it was, again, before I've stuck all my dies together, just out of some scrap paper. This is June 2020 history exam. I cut myself a little template. So this is exactly the same size as our largest die that we're using. And you can tell I've got kids that are doing GCSEs and A-levels. They're both, I think this must be from last year when my eldest was doing her GCSEs, because my other one's not doing history. She's doing geography and RS. So all I did was fold it in half as accurately as I possibly could, which is quite easy with circles, and then go in the other direction and fold it in half. And try, it doesn't matter if it's not dead on that centre line, but just make sure it is in half. And if you remember your maths, that means that that point is dead in the centre. So all I did was, on the one I've got, is use my pokey tool, poke me a little hole through at that centre point. And what that means is that you can now line this up with your outer disc. And this is quite important again. It can be a tiny bit out, but it looks better if it's as close as you can get it. And then I'm just going to take my pencil and put a little pencil mark in that hole. So little hole, and I'm hoping you can see it. I've just got a pencil mark here in the centre. Now, I'm just going to take a Sharpie and just make that a tiny bit darker, just so you can see it on camera, and then I can also see it when it's inside my crocodile. So this is the crocodile Big Bite. I think, I'm not sure with the reach here, if you'd be able to reach all the way to the centre with the normal crocodile. It cuts through all those layers without a problem. And there's the little piece that came out. If you don't have one of those, I think the easiest way is probably make yourself 4 templates and do the same thing. Make a small template. We can put these apart now. Oh no, I've managed to do as I say, not as I do. I'm going to have to cover those up. I've ruined it with my low tack tape. I should have taken some of the tack off my tape. And I didn't even think I'd pressed that down very hard. So always, if you've got tape on, pull it right back. These things happen. We'll fix that in a minute. We'll put something over it, fix it somehow. So yeah, so if, as I was saying, if you've not got something that can punch through all this at once, I'd make myself 4 paper templates, do exactly the same thing, mark a hole at the centre on all 4 using my template for each one. And you only need to make those templates once and keep them. And then poke a hole through with something sharp, pokey tool, whatever. And you'll get the same thing. So all you need is some sort of brad. So this is my brad box. I've had some of these for decades. And all you need to do is make sure that your little legs are long enough to go through your layers. And I've just, actually, if I'm going to use the outer edge, I think I might use a black one on this. And then those bits that I've just ruined pulling my paper tape up, I might stick some dark coloured gems or something on. So all you do is layer it up and stick your feet over, and there you go. So now you've got your spinning puzzle. And you can make it a bit tighter or a bit looser depending, you know, once it's upright, they don't really spin. Okay, so this card blank is actually just slightly under 6x6 because it's actually a 15 centimetre square card. But that will mean that I've got a little bit of play with this paper. So when I stick this paper down, I can flip it over and trim it from the back. Now, just because you've got the little legs of the brad, I'd recommend lifting your back piece, this one, on some foam tape. So the outer one on this instance isn't going to spin. I've just got some nice thin, giant roll, I know, nice thin foam tape. And I'm just going to pop that on the back, just so it's got plenty of support, because it's an interactive piece. You don't want it to be all wibbly wobbly. I actually think I'm going to stick the paper down first, just so that this, when I stick it down, is going to line up with the paper. All I need to do now is pull off all my release paper and stick this in the middle, lined up as best I can with that outside edge. Oh, and just so you know, I just made sure that I didn't have any foam tape so that it would interfere with this. In case the brad spins, just make sure it's free. So there we go, there's card number 1. So the outer disc doesn't spin, though like I said, we could have made it spin. We could have added another circle back there and stuck the back circle down and had the brad go through it as well. So we could have done that, but so in this case, all these bits spin. It's not perfect because I've ripped my paper, but I'm thinking because I did the black brad in the middle, I could stick some, it's like gems maybe, or we could just do a little bit of inking or something just to cover up the worst of those. The only thing left to do is open up the card and just trim off any excess paper. Okay, so I've popped off, had my lunch, got my coffee, sit home out of the way before I spill it. And I just thought I'd show you, I kind of fixed these bits just with a little bit of Catherine Pooler dye ink. Because the paper's got these little water splash marks, I don't think anyone would notice unless they knew. Obviously, you could do this with pretty much anything that, you know, would make a puzzle thing. I just thought I'd show you, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning, these were the dies that I used on it. These are Dawn Bibby Designs Bold and Beautiful, thank you. They've got the shadow die and then the big words. They do come in one pack, but this is how I store a lot of my word dies. I thought I'd do another example, and I thought this would be really fun for kids' cards. So I thought I would use these stamps, and this is Fairy Silhouette by Sweet Dixie. I don't know if this is still available, it's an old stamp set, but it's basically fairy silhouettes. So any sort of silhouette stamp I thought would be quite fun to do this with. And just so you can see, what I did was I actually used all of my nesting circles. So this is the largest one, which I used on the last set of cards. And this is basically the next one down. So this is the next size down in all of the circles. And again, cut myself a template, so that's ready to go. I've stuck my dies together like I showed you, lining up on my board. And I just grabbed, I thought, let's stick with it. Let's go with use up some of my paper. So this is from a very, very old Die Cuts with a View, who I think are part of, they're part of We Are Makers, which is We Are Memory Keepers. This is a really, really, really old paper pad that I think I got in TK Maxx years ago. My idea was that I could do some sort of fun layout with the silhouette stamps. I pulled this set out. This is, again, this is an old set. This is Poppy Crafts. And I thought, let's go with this little happy birthday because that's a cute little sentiment down the bottom there. Because these are nice solid silhouette stamps, I'm using VersaFine. So these are going to be a nice solid black image by the time we finished. Oh no, I've done my happy birthday upside down. I didn't notice that. How silly of me. We'll fix it. It's going to be a bit long and it's got a stitched outside edge, so I'll show you how I overcome that problem. So to start with, I'm just going to cut it out. Hopefully you can see this has got a stitch detail around the edge. So if I chopped it off with my scissors, this end here, because I want it to be smaller, wouldn't fit within, wouldn't have the stitch edge on. So all I do is decide where I want it and drop it back down, and it should just kind of stick back in like a puzzle piece. Even the stitches, if it's a regular stitch, which these are, even the stitches should just sort of stick back in. And then all you need to do is run this back through your die cutting machine. You only really need to cut this end, so you won't end up with the stitches at that end. I'll swap my cameras back and show you what I mean. So I'm just going to hang this edge, so the far edge, of course it's off the camera, isn't between the two die cutting plates. So there you go, you can see. So this end, this banner end isn't between the two die cutting plates. So I'm just gonna, all I need is that little end. And I know I've caught it because I can feel it, the tension. So now I can pull that back out, and you can see we've chopped it off. So there's the piece that I've just cut off. There it is. And now hopefully you can see the stitching. There's a very tiny impression on the edges, but the stitching goes all round. So that's a trick if you've got the right height, which this was. This was a nice height, but it was just a bit too long, and I didn't want that extra. And no one will ever know that that wasn't what you intended in the first place. So I like to show you all my mistakes as well. Now I know that the tape slightly ripped last time, so this is just my anti-static powder tool that I use on when I'm heat embossing, and just so that hopefully this tape won't rip this paper. It's gone through most of it, and it looks like it's gone through, but I think because the glue is still wet, it's just not quite managed to break the fibres. So this is what I was saying earlier. If your glue's still wet, the die kind of compresses the fibres rather than actually cutting them. We'll let that dry before we trim it. And because I like the idea of this one spinning as well, before I put the holes in the middle, I need something to stick this to so that it will spin. Because at the moment, if I stick this down, obviously this won't spin. So I need something to stick this to before I stick it to the card so that this will spin. And I was thinking it doesn't actually need to be the whole size of this. It just needs to be big enough for me to stick this to so that this will spin. As long as it hides behind it and I can tack it in the middle, it doesn't need to be the full height. I just need enough that I can stick this to that and then put some foam tape on this so that this will still spin. I was thinking we could do a little star or something maybe, because we could extend a little line and make it look like the thing in the middle is this fairy's wand. So there we go, I've just coloured one of these yellow brads in black. And let's see what that looks like. yeah, that looks quite fun. So I think what I'll do is I will just draw, just using the Sharpie again, just a little line straight down. So in the same way that this little one's got a wand, let's make the star in the middle this one's wand. This time I just need to pop this on, and it doesn't matter what orientation it's in this time, because I'm only going to put sticky on this, so the outside one will spin this time. To stick this down, I don't actually need anything to line up, but I think just for my sanity, I am going to make it line up whilst I stick it, just so I know that I've got it right. So there we go. So there we go. So I think this for a kid's card is really quite fun. But if you send it with it all mixed up, I think it should be quite obvious that it's a puzzle card. Okay, so this one is something that's been sitting in my bits box, coloured in like this, probably for about 2 years, which is terrible because it's a beautiful image. I think this one is a Thirsty Brush one from the Stamps by Me group of companies. And I thought, well, this will work. So this is actually another size down from the original ones that I did. So this is smaller again. So I thought that I would try and centre this on the butterfly's little head there. So that the brad is actually going to become his head. And I couldn't do it with bigger circles because it would have gone off the bottom of my card because it's stamped quite close to the edge. So I'm going to do the same idea and hang on to these bits, but I think I might maybe fussy cut them out so it's a different look and have them stuck flat on the card, and I'll decide in a minute if the outer ring is going to spin or not. And I also thought it might be quite nice, because I'm going to end up with quite a blank bit up here, to stamp something, but I think I'm going to wait and stamp a greeting and curve it to match this, so that I haven't got, you'll see what I mean, this will be quite a big blank space up in the middle. So I think I'll stamp something, and I'm fairly certain that this is just clear Versamark ink and clear embossing powder, and the darker colour is just because it's on, this isn't craft card, this is, I think it's Lime Tree Crafts Warm Mushroom. But yeah, I thought that would work. So to get this centred, I thought, so using the same idea that I used to get my centre for the holes, I thought I would just make sure I poke my pokey tools. You might be able to see. I poke my pokey tool through the hole, and I'm popping it just in the middle of his head. Okay. So I know now that this piece of paper is going to be where I want his head to end up, where I want the brad to end up, so that the brad becomes my butterfly's head. There we go. And that should have gone through no problem. And I've just realised I left my template in there. So now my template is now cut to pieces. That's okay. We can still use it because we've still got this guy in the middle. So I've got tiny bits left. So I think what we'll do is assemble all this like we did before. Again, I've just got scraps. This one is even missing an edge. So these are all in my scraps box, the same colour. And I'm wondering, I could even possibly put this onto like a 5x7 card and use this. So we'll see what it looks like and see what we're going to use. Okay, so we've got all these bits cut out. I chopped out my small butterfly. I've not decided if it's going on the front or not yet. And I've just got to decide whether I want to stamp a greeting or decorate the back panel. This is a 5x7 card. So like I said, this is the third one down from the largest of my nested dies, which just fit on 6x6. So this is what, so the third one down is obviously just under 5 inches because this is a 5x7 card blank. And so what I thought we'd do is something like this, so that we can have this either in the middle, and I even chopped out all these little tiny pieces so that we can make sure our butterfly is whole. There's the teeniest bit missing from there, but I don't think anyone will notice that. See, we could do something, you know, it'd still turn if we mounted this up on foam, or I could just use this on the inside. I cut it out because I know if I leave that in my bits box, it will never get used. So yeah, we could stick the outer circle flat, or we could raise it. Well, it won't be flat, it'd be up on a little bit of foam. And then if I just give this a little bit of shape, you'll see what I mean. We don't need to stick this edge down, so we could have the smaller one, and it would kind of give you a clue as to what your big picture was as well, I thought. So we could do something like that and not have it central. So this is a tiny little thank you sentiment. So I could do something where I curve it like that and put it there, but I think it'd look better here in the middle. So the way to get things to curve is to stick it to your stamp block and then just sort of bend it with your fingers and then stick it down. So I've just grabbed my Versamark, which is a clear sticky ink for anybody who doesn't know. And I've got my huge tub of Wow embossing powder. This is clear, and I buy coffee filter papers and just use those to collect my ink, and then any excess powder, and then they will get recycled once I've used them dozens of times. I didn't use anti-static powder on this, which was very silly of me. I'm going to use a microfiber cloth to wipe all of that off, and then I'm going to use the anti-static powder, re-stamp it, and hope that you can't see, because it will stick where you've been handling it and where there's any slightly damp glue. And of course I've been handling this using glue, so there was loads and you couldn't see it, but I think it would have shown once I'd inked it, once I'd embossed it. Let's heat this and hope it comes out. That's come out not badly, considering I had to do it twice. I think I need some texture in the background. Off screen, I've just found this. It's actually a pearlescent card, and it kind of tones in with the blues in the butterfly. And I just ran it through this old Anna Griffin Cuttlebug. It's called Feather Illusion, this one. I might just find some gems just to pop down the rest of his body so his head's not just sort of floating in the middle there. But you get the idea that this all will spin like on my other examples. And this is a 5x7 tenfold. stands up really nicely. And I quite like this idea. So because this stamp set has the little mini image, you've almost got like the picture on the box, like if it was a jigsaw puzzle. You can see it's got dimension, shine. So there we are. I've just put some extra ones just on there. So he's got the brad for his head, and it still spins. And there we go. Okay, so my last idea is going to use this set of stamps, which is the Spot the Dog, and they came with a creative stamping a year or two ago, and they were one of the extra little A6 stamps that came with a bigger stamp plate. So these are Spot the Dog, and all I've done is I've got my pieces cut out, I've got my dies ready stuck together, same as before. And all I did was I drew round the largest die just to give me an idea of what size my circle would be if I'm going to stamp on it. And I've just got it ready in my stamping press. And I'm just going to use these stamps and try and make a nice little birthday scene and make this into a fun little birthday card. So there we go, I've got a little scene set up. I've probably just masked so that the balloon strings look like they're hidden behind the doghouse. So I'm just going to take that one off. I'm probably going to try and stamp everything else, and then I'll just put some masking paper in. And I'm going to stamp these in Tuxedo Black Memento ink, because I think I'm going to probably just do some really fast colouring in alcohol markers. Make sure I've got my happy birthday the right way up this time. So there we go, all stamped. I'm just going to give that a minute or two to dry, and I stupidly took my mask off without taking my stamp off, but I should be able to colour that out. I didn't want to do any fancy shading, so I'm just going to take my cue from the packaging, because these are cartoon images. This is what the packaging looks like, and it just gives indications. So I'm just going to basically colour the images the same as the packaging, and then the ones that aren't coloured on the packaging, I'll just pick colours that we're already using. If you're not feeling inspired, always look at the packaging if there's a colour copy on it, because it'll always give you some ideas. And of course, if you knew who this was going to, you know, you could have put an age on it. So this would be good, you know, for toddler age. And you'll notice when I did the stamping, I did make sure I'd left space in the middle so I wasn't sticking my brad through somebody's head. And I thought I'd show you, because I've set my cam back up, how to do this part. So if you want your card to be like this one, where it is circular and it stands up on its own, so it's a circular card blank, I thought I'd quickly show you, because I thought that'd be quite nice for this one to be like that. So I've just got a card blank. So this card blank is I think it's 15 centimetres square, which is slightly smaller than the 6-inch ones. So this is a 15 centimetre square one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape my die. Let's grab some more tape. I can tape it anywhere that's going to hang off. So even if it sticks, I'll only be ripping these pieces. So what I've done is I've left, hopefully you can see, the edge of the die hanging off. Yeah. So that this piece will be the hinge on the card. So it won't cut this piece because the die is hanging off that top edge. I might just move it ever so slightly so there's just slightly more. You can always have a look from the back. Yeah, that feels better, just a little bit more this time. So I'll pop this back on my cutting plate, and you don't need to do partial die cutting with it hanging out the plate because the die isn't going to cut that part because it's not under it. So we'll pop you back through. Now it depends on the thickness of the cardstock whether it's going to go through both of these. It has gone through, so I forgot to switch my camera back, sorry, while I pulled it out. But this, because it's simple shape, it went through both layers. Not that I can open it. There we go. It went through both layers, no problem. But if yours doesn't, all you need to do is, it will have gone through the top layer. So all you need to do is trim off along those, drop, you can do it with it closed, don't worry, drop your die back on like this with it. It'll just drop back in and wiggle like a puzzle piece, like that has done. So you just drop it back in and cut again, and it'll cut through, no problem, because you've only got a small amount to go through. So there we go. There's the whole card, which I think is quite fun for a little kid. Now, what you need to do with circular cards to stop them doing that, and also doing that if you do get it to stand up, is you need to trim just a tiny bit off the bottom at the back. So that's how you get circular cards to not wibble wobble. And yeah, I'm really pleased with that one. I think if you've got, you know, the right age child to be interested in spot, this works really well. It's like, you know, they're not interested really in cards, they just want the presents, whereas that makes it into more of a sort of mini present in itself. So I think I got a bit carried away with this one. So that's one I just made. That's the first one that I made on the video. And these two were the ones that I already had made. Less happy about that one, but you get the idea. And then this one, another one that would be great for kids, or, you know, shows you can do it with a silhouette stamp, works really well. And then this one, this was just using a stamped and coloured in image. And obviously, like I said, you can put things on, like the jewels, and that's showing it on, so that's on a 5x7 rather than on a square card or a round card. So you can adapt it and cut out the edges of your images like I did on this one. You can adapt it to all sorts of different cards. So there you go, 6 cards, all roughly the same. So hopefully it gives you some inspiration of what you can do with them. So thanks for watching. It's been a long one, this, I know, bit of a marathon. If you've stuck with me this long, thank you so much. And I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.